What if I told you that the world isn't run by governments, corporations, or ideas, but by something far more ancient, far more intimate, and far more dangerous: unconscious craving? Not just sexual lust, but the craving for stimulation, for escape, for novelty. A force so subtle it disguises itself as love, passion, ambition, even success. But beneath the surface, it's a parasite. It wears the mask of pleasure while it empties your soul, and unless you see it clearly, it will own you. Because whoever overcomes lust doesn't just overcome temptation, they overcome the world. This isn't a warning from religion, it's a revelation from depth psychology. It's what Carl Jung, Plato, and the mystics all tried to whisper across centuries. If you don't bring your cravings into consciousness, they'll puppeteer your life from the shadows. Jung called it the shadow self, the part of you you refuse to look at, but which shapes every decision. When lust is unconscious, it becomes your silent master. It decides what you chase, what you fear, who you love, and what you sabotage. Think about it. How many choices in your life were made not from clarity, but from compulsion? How many nights were wasted chasing the next fix, a screen, a body, a thrill, only to wake up feeling hollow again? You thought you were searching for pleasure, but really you were trying to escape yourself. Jung warned us, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And lust is one of its oldest disguises, because lust is never about what it claims to be. It doesn't want connection, it wants consumption. It doesn't want wholeness, it wants a high. And the more you feed it, the louder it screams. Because that's how addiction works, it keeps offering more while giving you less. In this way, lust isn't just a moral danger, it's a neurological trap. Neuroscience confirms what sages always knew. Every time you indulge in compulsive desire, your brain is flooded with dopamine, a temporary reward. But the catch? Your baseline satisfaction drops. What once thrilled you now bores you, and so you seek more, again and again and again, until life itself feels numb. Dr. Anna Lembke, author of Dopamine Nation, explains this paradox. The more pleasure we chase, the more pain we feel. Why? Because the brain craves balance. Overstimulate it, and it begins to shut down your receptors. You become emotionally blunted, spiritually flat, constantly reaching but never arriving. This is the secret slavery of lust. It doesn't just rob you of discipline, it robs you of presence, of meaning, of your very capacity to feel alive. And society is built to keep you addicted. Algorithms study your cravings, they feed you what keeps you scrolling. Advertising exploits your insecurity. Entertainment sells you fantasy after fantasy, none of which will ever hold you. This is not pleasure. This is captivity in disguise. And here's the part no one wants to say. Lust isn't about sex. It's about escape. It's your refusal to sit with your silence, your boredom, your pain. It's your attempt to dodge the deep questions. Who am I without the craving? What am I truly hungry for? Most people never ask those questions, because to sit with yourself, to actually be still in the presence of your own emptiness, is terrifying. But that's where the transformation begins. Not with repression, not with shame, but with radical honesty. Lust is not your enemy. It is your invitation. It shows you where you're fragmented, where you're scared, where you're still reaching for something outside to fix what's broken inside. Jung didn't say to kill your impulses. He said to integrate them. To take the wild animal of desire and bring it into the light, not to tame it, but to understand it. Because once it is seen clearly, it no longer controls you. It becomes fuel, creative energy, direction, fire, but only if you stop feeding it blindly. You see, the Stoics weren't joyless monks. Marcus Aurelius wasn't trying to kill pleasure, he was trying to protect his soul. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." And in a world that wants you constantly stimulated, distracted, and chasing, that strength is rebellion. You were not born to chase shadows, you were born to become light. And that begins the moment you stop asking what you want and start asking what you need. Not for gratification, but for growth. This is not a moral sermon, this is psychological liberation. You can either serve your craving or you can reclaim your attention, but you cannot do both. Ask yourself now, quietly, honestly, how many moments of my life have I missed because I was caught in desire? How many people have I seen only through the lens of my hunger, not their humanity? What would my mind feel like if it weren't always looking for the next fix? Because that stillness is where your power is waiting. And once you taste that stillness, even for a second, you'll begin to understand why all the sages, Buddhist, Christian, Taoist, pointed to the same truth. Freedom begins where craving ends. And that's only the beginning. Before we go deeper, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Psychopulse. Not because it's trendy, but because if you're the kind of person who asks hard questions and wants raw truth without the sugarcoat, this is where you belong. Now listen closely. Lust is not what you think it is. It isn't about sex, it's about distraction. Distraction from the now, from yourself, from your pain. It's not pleasure you're chasing, it's anesthesia. And the machine knows it. The machine, consumerism, marketing, social media, feeds it, fuels it, profits from it. Because a distracted mind is an obedient mind. A craving brain is predictable, programmable, and easy to sell to. And this is why lust is not just a personal weakness, it's a systemic strategy. Your desire has been weaponized, and every time you indulge it without awareness, you give away a piece of your power. You leak energy, you weaken focus, you dull the edge of your own becoming. Jung saw this clearly. He didn't say desire is bad, he said unconscious desire is dangerous. Because it's not you that wants, it's the part of you you've never looked at. The wounded child, the shamed self, the rejected fragment buried deep beneath your persona. And when that part is hungry and you're not aware, it grabs the wheel. It chooses your relationships, it hijacks your goals, it keeps you caught in loops of temporary highs and long-term emptiness. Freud believed that repressing desire led to neurosis, but Jung went further. He believed in transmutation, in evolution. You don't kill the beast, you train it. You don't silence your hunger, you feed it better food. Desire in its raw form is just energy. The question is, where are you aiming it? Because right now for most people that energy is scattered. It's bled into pixels, fantasies, empty hookups, and algorithmic spirals. You get the hit, then the crash, then the craving for the next hit. The mind becomes fragmented. Your soul becomes fatigued. You can't sit still because stillness reveals the truth. You're starving for something more than lust can ever provide. Carl Jung taught that the libido, the energy of life, is not just sexual, it's spiritual, and when it is integrated rather than suppressed, it becomes the force behind love, creativity, and transformation. This is the path of individuation, the journey of becoming whole by uniting the conscious self with the unconscious shadow. And lust, unchecked, is one of the biggest shadows of them all. It masquerades as love, as connection, as empowerment. But in truth, it blinds. It blinds you to the soul of the other. It reduces people to projections, objects, means to an end. And here's the tragedy. The more we indulge this illusion, the further we drift from real intimacy. Because lust isn't about seeing, it's about consuming. It's about devouring the image of someone, not understanding the essence of them. And when your mind is wired for consumption, you can't connect. You can only chase. That's why the ancients spoke of discipline as liberation. Not to shame, not to punish, but to preserve clarity. In Hinduism, the practice of brahmacharya is not repression, it's redirection, preserving life force for something greater. In Buddhist thought, craving is the root of suffering, and in Christian mysticism, saints didn't see lust as sin but as fog on the soul's eye. The goal wasn't guilt, it was vision. Imagine this. You wake up, no craving, no scrolling, no regret, just clarity, just presence. The silence of your room feels full, not empty. You look in the mirror and you don't feel hunger, you feel peace. Because your energy is yours again. Because you've stopped outsourcing your aliveness to stimulation. That's the state the mystics called freedom. Not an escape from desire, but an elevation of it. Not suppression, but sublimation. What could you build if your mind was no longer divided? What would you write? Who would you become? What kind of love would you attract? Not out of need, but out of overflow. Because the truth is, desire is not your enemy. It is your compass, if you know how to read it, if you can sit with it long enough to hear what it's actually pointing to. And it always points back to wholeness, to integration, to the place inside you that says, I don't need more, I just need to remember who I am. Let's keep going, because the next step isn't about resisting lust, it's about transmuting it. And that shift will change the way you walk through this world forever. There comes a moment, quiet, disorienting, irreversible, when you realize you've been mistaking hunger for love, that every indulgence was a cry not for pleasure but for presence, and the thrill you chased, it was never about the thing itself, it was about escaping the ache of emptiness. That moment, rare as it is the doorway, because once you see lust for what it is, not a desire but a distraction, you can't unsee it. It's not passion, it's evasion. It's not life, it's noise pretending to be music. Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But you cannot become anything real while you are enslaved to cravings you don't understand. When you live reactive, chasing sensation, avoiding silence, addicted to the next flash of dopamine, your life is no longer yours. You are being lived by something else. By algorithms, by wounds, by fear. That is the tragedy of modern existence. We mistake movement for freedom, but compulsion isn't movement, it's a treadmill. And lust is the belt that keeps it running. Now imagine this. Imagine transmutation, not suppression, not abstinence as denial, but a rechanneling of your life force into something sacred. This is not spiritual fluff, it's ancient alchemy. The same fire that burns you in lust can warm the world through your purpose. Tantric traditions knew this. Taoist sages knew this. Even the mystics of the West, cloistered in their silence, practiced it, not to avoid life, but to feel it more completely. They learned that the vital energy lust hijacks is the same energy that fuels genius, beauty, compassion, and vision, but only if it's not leaking. Only if it's contained, breathed, purified. You've heard of sacred retention, of monks glowing, creatives entering flow, warriors vibrating with calm. This isn't myth. It's what happens when you stop scattering your energy into compulsive fantasy and instead gather it inward, concentrate it, and let it rise. When the craving hits, and it will hit, ask yourself, is this real? Is this hunger or habit? What am I actually avoiding right now? Not to judge it, but to understand it, because the craving isn't a curse, it's a compass. It shows you where you still feel unloved, unseen, unwanted. Now you may be wondering, if I give up lust, what will I have left? And the answer is everything you thought lust would give you, but never did. Focus, joy, connection, a deeper, truer intimacy. Not built on possession, but presence. Not fueled by image, but by essence. You stop needing people to fill your holes. You start meeting them as equals. Not because you conquered desire, but because you evolved it. There's a word for when you act against your better judgment because your will is weak. Akrasia. Aristotle wrote about it. Socrates was obsessed with it. Because it's one of the most dangerous human conditions to know what is right but to be unable to do it. Lust often lives here, in that gap between clarity and action, and if you live there too long, you start to lose trust in yourself. That is the real cost. Not guilt, not shame, but the erosion of self-respect. And when your word to yourself means nothing, everything else begins to collapse. But the moment you choose mastery, not over others but over your own attention, everything begins to shift. You become magnetic, not in some shallow performative way, but because your energy is clean, focused. And wholeness, in a world addicted to fragments, is irresistible. You begin to walk differently. You speak with weight. Your presence becomes a silence that calms others. Because you're not trying to be anything. You're not trying to take anything. You're not reaching. You're rooted. This is what the world needs more than ever. Not louder voices, not more opinions, but quieter minds, still centers. People who no longer serve their craving, but their calling. And here's what they never tell you. Discipline isn't punishment, it's devotion. Devotion to your highest possibility. Devotion to the version of you who wakes up unchained. Who no longer has to lie to themselves about what they're doing behind closed doors. Who no longer gives their energy to illusions. Let's go further, because there's one more transformation waiting. The final one. The one that doesn't just set you free from lust, it sets you free from illusion itself. And when you reach that point, nothing outside you will ever have power over you again. You become sovereign, steady, whole, and the fire that once consumed you, it now lights the path. If this message has stirred something in you, like and subscribe to Psycho Pulse. Not just to follow this journey, but to declare you're done living beneath your own potential. You're ready to stop reacting and start evolving. You're ready to stop craving and start creating. Let's go all the way now. Lust, at its core, is not about wanting too much. It's about settling for too little. It's the scream of a soul that has forgotten how to listen. The hunger that rises when you lose contact with your own center. And that's why it's so powerful. Because it's not a desire for flesh or thrill or conquest. It's the desire to feel whole again. But when you don't know what wholeness feels like, anything can imitate it. And lust is the best counterfeit of them all. Carl Jung warned us, the libido, what he called the psychic energy of life, is sacred. When integrated, it gives birth to creativity, compassion, transformation. But when fragmented, when denied, when buried in fantasy and compulsive pleasure, it creates neurosis. We become haunted by what we refuse to face. And lust, unexamined, becomes a ghost that drives you. You think you're choosing, but you're reacting. You think you're free, but you're in chains. Not because you're evil, because you're unconscious. And when you're unconscious, the machine runs you. The world sells you substitutes, screens instead of silence, swipes instead of depth. Endless novelty instead of real intimacy. Lust fuels that system. It's the engine of consumerism, of shallow power, of distraction culture, and it keeps you focused on everything but your soul. So what happens when you reclaim your energy? When you stop chasing and start sitting? Something extraordinary. The craving dissolves, not because it was defeated, but because it was finally understood. You realize it wasn't lust you wanted, it was presence. It wasn't stimulation. It was truth. And from that moment on, everything changes. Your relationships deepen, not because you found the one, but because you started showing up. Your mind clears, not because life got easier, but because you stopped escaping it. You start to feel your own power again. Not because you dominate, but because you're no longer dominated. You no longer enter relationships from lack. You create from overflow. You no longer reach for the thrill to numb the silence. You find your joy in the silence. That's when lust becomes love. Not romantic love, but something far more ancient. Agape. The love that sees, the love that stays. The love that allows all parts of you to be known, even the broken ones, even the ones you thought disqualified you. Saint Augustine once confessed his battle with lust, how he clung to it even as he prayed for release. And in that struggle, he discovered something timeless. He wrote, "You have made us for yourself, O Lord, and our heart is restless until it rests in you." That restlessness? It's not sin, it's signal, the soul crying to come home. And until you understand that, you'll keep feeding the body what the spirit is starving for. You are not here to conquer desire by killing it. You are here to transcend it. Not to escape life, but to become more fully alive. Not to shame yourself into silence, but to rise into self-respect, self-possession, and sovereignty. Because in the end, the one who overcomes lust doesn't just overcome an urge, they overcome illusion. They walk through the temptations of this world untouched because they no longer seek outside what they've built inside. That's what it means to overcome the world. Not to reject it, but to move through it with clear eyes and a quiet mind. You become unshakable. Not because you feel nothing, but because you're no longer ruled by everything. You feel it all. You breathe with it, you choose. And that choice, that sacred, quiet choice to stay, to sit, to see, is enlightenment. So ask yourself now, what kind of life do you want to live? A life ruled by flashes of pleasure, or a life built on depth, peace, and inner fire? Because the craving will call again. The urge will whisper. But now you know the truth. The thrill is not the goal. The image is not the prize. The escape is not the answer. You are. And the moment you stop looking for power in what consumes you and start creating it from what sustains you, you become free. You overcome the world. Not with force, but with presence. And that is the final transmutation. Turning lust into love, craving into clarity, fire into light. You no longer run, you arrive. And in that stillness, you finally remember who you were before the world taught you to chase. Now tell me in the comments, what part of you is ready to wake up? What part of your energy are you reclaiming? Because your evolution doesn't start later. It starts now.